Alrighty, so thank you for joining me. And I want to take some time today to show you how to be very intentional with your customization for RLA. So this is for my RELA teachers. So with this being said, let's jump straight in. I wanted to start here with Canvas because I wanted you all to really focus in on the resources that are here. I have noticed that we have videos, and so please do not skip out on watching the videos. The videos actually help you as a teacher focus your moves versus those things that your students should do. So before we even jump into customization, we first have to go back to the DOL. And so this is the DOL for Monday. And I already know that my TEK is 7C. So I do understand that students will have to be able to support using text evidence. And I also see here that students are analyzing what plot elements. So with that being said, let's go straight and let's look at the questions. And one thing we know, RELA teachers, is that the first question is a comprehension question. So I know that's not my most challenging question. So I want to continue reading and looking to determine which question or questions will be the most challenging. Because I did a little bit of homework already, I know that question number 2 and question number 4 will be the most challenging questions. I know this because both questions require students to select 2 correct answers. What that means is if they only get one of the 2 answers correct, the entire question is incorrect, right? So there's no partial credit here. So it's really, really important that I have my students practice the same way that they will see the DOL, and seeing that 2 of the 5 questions require them to have 2 correct answers. I really, really, really want to have my students practice this. Additionally, these are the 2 questions that really hone in on that 7C. It hones in on the skill of students being able to then support using text evidence. And I already know that this is also a major or a high frequency TEK. So I want to make sure that I have my students practice this as well. Now we're going to look directly at the slide deck. I'm going to first allow you to look at the slide deck in its original form, so the way that it comes to you from the district, because I want you to be able to compare it to what I did. So as you can see, the district give you all of these slides, and these are meaningful slides. So it does not mean that you need to skip them or erase them. However, for me, when you see my slide deck, I will have these hidden. But for you, the teacher, these are pieces that I would print out, that I would reference, that I would annotate. I would take note of these slides because they are very, very important. Now, when I get here, I see that students are actually practicing a different TEK. And again, unless my historical data shows me that my students are really doing well on 7C and 8C, then I might want to change this and align it to the TEKs, the current TEKs for that day. And that's an easy thing. So I'll kind of go over that once you see my slide deck. And then I get here and I see all of this. Now, these are pieces here where I would hide. I would not give this to my kids. So this is a lot of extra slides, and I'm just going to click through them. And some of these pieces would be good as scaffolds. Others of them are probably good for teachers. But if I were you, I would definitely change. Now, this is one thing I want to point out, which is why I wanted you to see the original slide deck. We do not do pre-annotated slides, okay? This takes away from your ability to share your thinking. Remember, you're reading, annotating, sharing your thinking. You're doing all 3 of those things simultaneously. So you need to make sure that these things are happening and that you aren't just kind of clicking through a slide. That's a no-no. So I'm not going to spend any more time on this. Enough for this. Let's go to my slide deck. Okay. So you'll see over here, it's kind of like skipped. So when I click slideshow, it's not going to show it, or it shouldn't show it. It should take you to the next one. So all those are hidden. This is where it's going to start for my students when I'm teaching. So please keep in mind, you need to start here. All right. Now, what I decided to do, I took out all of the pre-annotations, but I did leave this part. This is actually now a part of my students' do now. So that's where we are, just FYI, we're in the do now. This is not the I do, okay? In the do now, I have my students doing a recap. I will not be recapping chapters 6 through 9 with them. This is something that they can do in the do now. Remember, I told you in the previous do now I would do something different. So this is me doing something different. And then then I will come over here, and I did not change the question, but this question will be totally different. It will go back to whatever they read over here, and then it will give them an opportunity to write. And I would say this question needs to lean in on 7C and 8C. So I will revise this so that I'm hitting both of those teaks at the same time, where I could say, hey, how did the conflict in chapters 6 through 9, how did that actually impact the rising action throughout the text thus far? And then I will have them have maybe a multiple choice. And then over here, then use text evidence to support this, right? So that will be my written portion. So however you want to do that, you can do that, or you can separate the teaks. But I would definitely just start here with the do now with the recap, but also with both of those teaks. All right. So then this introduces what my I do. You already know this. So we know we're analyzing plot elements using text evidence. And so you can see here in my I do, I start with the recap of chapters 10 through 11. I wanted to stamp this because when you look at the original slide deck, it actually have students doing this. I'm trying to get to the point so that when I get to the we do, we're reading the new portion of the text or the new chapter together in the we do. Okay. So that's the reason why the first recap is happening in the do now with students. The second recap is happening during my modeling. And the reason why this is still effective is because I'm not teaching the text, but I'm teaching the skill, the teaks, right? So I know my teaks is 8C and 7C. So again, we know anytime we read and annotate, we have to have a focus or a purpose for reading. So this is in my box. I know it has something else in the original slide deck. I'm going to utilize this in order to set a purpose and a focus for my reading, for my think aloud, and then for annotations. And I'm going to make sure that my students have this, and then they're able to annotate as well. As you can see, I did leave this scaffold here, and that's perfectly fine. It's built into the slide deck. But when I come up here, I'm going to have an essential question to set the purpose for my reading for annotation. Then when I move this right here, I'm not going to have, I will skip over it. I don't think my computers let me skip over certain pieces. But now we've gotten to the we do. What I decided to do, just so you can see it, I'm going to take it out of that view, is that this paragraph here in 20 and 23, they're actually one paragraph. I chunked the text. This is a piece, part of the feedback that I've given this past week. Make sure you're chunking the text, meaning when you get to the we do, you should not be reading all of the text. I don't care if you're in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, your students need to read independently, right? They need time where they're reading and you're not reading to them. So what I did, I took one paragraph, I split it. So I will read this portion. I will again have a focus or purpose for reading here. I will read and annotate based on this purpose. And then we will discuss something else that I left here. Then I'm going to have a question here, and my kids will whiteboard this. So we're doing multiple things are happening here. We're reading, we're annotating, we will do a think, pair, share, and then we're going to do a whiteboard. Okay. So I just want to make sure that you understand all the pieces that's happening. Then here, the students are going to read with their partner or in their little triad if there's more than 2. I'm going to have those students read based on the focus and the purpose for reading. They're going to annotate based on the focus and the purpose for reading, right? And then from there, they're going to move. Hold on, let me go back to my slideshow. They're going to go into another question. Whiteboard. Okay. So I wanted to kind of show you how I have just customized from there. Then I know that they have given us a writing task here in the we do, which I left because we could still align this, or it still align back to the 7C portion. I would just tighten up the question a little bit, but I wouldn't necessarily change it. So this is a quick chat GPT. Just say, hey, can you more closely align this to TEAC 7C? And you should be good to go. So it's not a question that I would throw out. It's just one that I would tighten up. Now let's move into the you do. Okay, I did not make a lot of adjustments. Like this is one, I'll be honest with you, I would not have. I would not. This is maybe something students can do at the end if we have extra time, just as a writing, so that then they could maybe answer for themselves based on the sequence of events. Give me your analysis or paraphrase how did the story resolve, or how was it resolved, the problem resolved in chapter 12, right? But I would not necessarily do that as a in-class activity. This is where my UDO actually begins, and I'm sorry that my computer isn't letting me skip these extra slides. I'm having to talk through them anyway, but I want you to see this is where we'll start. There is an adjustment that I would make. If I were you, I would actually add another, answer choice here. And then it will have to be what? Two correct answers. And I would do this intentionally because remember, we already know that this is part of the challenge that they are going to have on their DOL. And my goal is to set them up for success. So I would make sure that they're practicing that consistently. I would take off some other pieces and I would chunk this out so that I could have two answer choices. Something else is just making sure that every single question will align to 8C and 7C, or if it's just an 8C question, that I still have two correct answer choices. Because what I do know is that if they miss those 2 out of the 5, they can't go to the team center, which means that they did not even get to proficiency, right? The goal is at least 4 out of 5. My goal for my students, 100% 5 out of 5. So then I want to make sure that I continuously give them the same stimuli or to question them the same way in which the DOL does. And I already know that the first one is a comprehension question. So just as long as we read, we analyze, annotate with a purpose, they should be able to get those pieces correct because they're just going to implement those same strategies when they're working independently. But when it comes to the 7C and 8C, I have to be more intentional and I have to be strategic in my approach. So that's the reason why I'm emphasizing to you guys the importance of making sure they practice using the similar stimuli, but also aligning your questions to the LOs that they have, because there are 2 that's being presented in this one lesson. All right, so let's keep going through. And what I do notice, they keep adding a couple of, I'm not gonna say fluff, but extra slides that I don't need. So when I get here, it's asking about the main problem. I would change this to say which text evidence shows the problem, of the main problem in chapter 12. So I would reverse the way that it's worded, that'll make it a 7C question versus just being a generic, hey, comprehension question. So that's one way that you could do that. And then when I come here, it says which events leads to John discovering the store is gone, right? And so this is one thing. Again, I would switch it over. I would take the question, put it in chat, and ask chat to give me a question that's more closely aligned to 8C and 7C. And then of course I would make this a 2-part, or you can do an A and a B. That's still the same thing. Or just make it where they have to have 2 correct answers. Either way go, I would change the stimuli. And then lastly, they have this writing, and they talk about why the details important to the plot. I personally would ask a different question. Okay. I would want a 7C question here. I would base it on this portion of the text, but my question would land in 7C, where they're having to then use text evidence in order to support their response. So that's how I would do that differently. I know typically I've asked you not to put the writing in the UDO, but this is one that could be hit really quickly and then you could move on, or you can just make it be the last question. So instead of it being in slide 35, I would move it here. I would take this closing one and I would skip it. Okay. And then that way, that'll be the last thing that my students actually see before we go into the DOL. And so hopefully these are some pieces that actually support you or help you with your customization. I know this was a 3rd grade lesson. Hopefully next week I'll choose a different grade level, but I just wanted to make sure that I went through these pieces with you on a RLA side versus just a math side. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much for your time.